I'm aware that many people have been part of this diocese for many years. Others of you have moved into the diocese over these last 5 years. Some of you may have come to faith during that time. Hopefully many of us have grown in faith over these past 5 years, as we have lived that commitment together to share the transforming gospel of Jesus Christ, so that people may know life in all its fullness. There are many stories to tell. And very briefly, I want to take you back to almost 5 years to the day, when there was a large diocesan party and we launched our life vision amid glow sticks and music and dancing, hot food, and of course, cake. We deliberately gathered at the University of Gloucestershire because we wanted to meet beyond the walls of our church buildings to celebrate our commitment to this vision we had discerned together in how we joined in with what God is doing. And as Bishop Robert has said, many of you will recall taking part in prayer and conversation in your local context, followed by quite an iterative process as we gathered all that was heard from worshipping communities, schools, chaplaincies, the wider community, conversations with people who identified as followers of Jesus Christ and those who didn't. And we gathered all that together, and in that iterative process, what emerged was L-I-F-E, embraced by those words of Jesus Christ as presented in the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 10. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. 4 themes: leadership committed to transformation, imagination opening new paths to faith, faith living as adventurous followers of Jesus Christ, engagement living out Christ's love and hope. 4 headings, 14 commitments, yet with real clarity that no one and no one place is being asked to do everything. It was and is about people in their local context across the diocese finding their place and calling within the framework of the life vision. A key principle was that no one was told they had to do anything, rather a permissive framework with the work of priority groups and diocesan staff offering input and training and initiatives to support and encourage people in the commitments they had discerned they would be focusing on. And in all of this, it's been really important to keep a picture, a dream in front of us of what we yearn for this to look like. Too often, when we are doing change within the church, or indeed within government or the wider world, we start from a place of efficiency, or more, or simply trying to do better, perhaps even trying to be more effective, but without being clear of what good might look like. And so in 2016, as we moved into 2017, I painted a picture, a dream of what the landscape might look like in 5 years' time. A dream shaped by the coming in of God's kingdom, joining in with God's mission to reconcile all things to God's self. That verse in Colossians 1, verse 20. And I'll come back to that picture in a moment. Here we are, 5 years later. And as you look back at your personal life, life together in your local context, life together across the diocese, there are many stories to tell. Stories told with smiles and joy. Stories told with tears and sadness. And none of us could have predicted a worldwide pandemic. A pandemic in which a number of those life commitments took on a new reality and in fact seemed almost prophetic. And in July last year, I wrote to everyone to assure you that there was no intention to change our life vision when we came towards the end of the 5 years. I also reminded us That when we hear those beautiful words of Jesus Christ in John's Gospel regarding life in all its fullness, it's easy to forget that they are set within a context of danger and potential destruction. If you read back in John 10, Jesus refers to the wild animals which seek to devour, the thief who, unlike Jesus Christ, breaks in to steal the sheep. In the face of potential trauma and destruction, Jesus presents himself as the shepherd who doesn't abandon his sheep, but who vulnerably lies as the gate across the entrance to the sheepfold, with unwavering love and sacrifice. And I think it's really important for us to remember that context as we move into this next season, not least amid the weariness, not least amid the cost of having lived these past 2 years and all that that means for the future. Life in all its fullness is not about big grins, denial of pain, and a consumerist theology. As we emerge into the seasons ahead, many people are rightly asking questions across our world of what is the sort of world we want to see. Been many conversations around that at COP26. We don't know what lies ahead. Yet as followers of Christ, we do know how the story ends. And one day, God's kingdom will be fully present on earth as in heaven. And so we live our tears and our smiles with hope. With hope. Which takes me back to the painting of that big vision. That picture of what good could look like as we join in with what God is doing. As we with creation groan and yearn for that day when justice and mercy and love will be complete. That day when all things and people will be reconciled to God. And in our groaning, we sing a song of hope as we trust in the God who is making all things new. And I've endeavoured to paint something of that in the words at the beginning of a leaflet letter that I hope someone is going to pass me a copy. Thank you, Lucy. Just the leaflet, thank you. So hopefully on your seats you have a rather extended letter from me in the form of an A4 letter, which will be going out to everyone next week. And in here, I have painted that picture at the very beginning. It's very similar to what I wrote in 2016, but it's been further shaped by listening to stories from across the diocese over these past 5 years and watching and praying. And there seem to be 5 key commitments where the spotlight of the Holy Spirit is shining. But before outlining those, let me read the picture I have painted. I pray that in the coming years there will be a rich variety of sustainable and diverse worshipping communities, long established and new, celebrated as living and breathing beacons of love, hope and justice. Our worshipping communities will be enabling the body of Christ to grow, be strengthened, and to participate in God's work amid joy and pain, such that new and existing baptized followers of Jesus Christ of all ages, backgrounds, colour and accent are increasingly confident in living and sharing their stories of faith in their everyday context, rooted in prayer. Stories of faith will be growing through strong links between preschool groups, schools, homes and local worshipping communities, and we will be at the forefront of caring for creation. Across the diocese, we'll be partnering with organisations and making connections with people committed to the care and transformation of lives, communities and the environment, grounded in our desire for God's kingdom to come on earth as in heaven. As we serve and engage with the struggles and delights of the people and places of this diocese, people of all ages and backgrounds will be inspired to discover Jesus Christ and life in all its fullness, and become disciples. And at this point, I want to say an enormous thank you. Thank you for our shared life together. Thank you for the stories that continue to be shared, stories of tiny seeds and stories of fruit-laden branches. Thank you for faithfulness. And indeed, it is the F of faith which sits at the heart of this vision. Inside this letter leaflet, I've endeavoured to reflect a range of the fruitfulness we've seen over these past 5 years. It is a leaflet and not a book. It's a spattering of paint on the canvas rather than a detailed picture. And as I say at the end of the leaflet, I hope you will do some looking back in your own context and add more detail to the picture. So if you're thinking, well, why didn't the bishop mention that and that and that? It's because it is a leaflet and not a book. I'm just going to invite those 5 people who are going to come and help me with the commitments, just to line themselves up. As I say, where is the spotlight shining? Where is the spotlight shining? We haven't changed our life vision, but it is apparent that the spotlight seems to be shining on 5 of our 2017 commitments. And you have those on just about everything that's on your sheet. But let's just hear them read out now.
Being advocates for flourishing through initiatives which combat injustice, environmental destruction, exclusion and isolation.
Encouraging new and courageous ways of worshipping in different places which connect with more people.
Nurturing everyday disciples.
Investing in people and programmes which excite young people to explore and grow in faith.
Developing diverse lay and ordained leaders.
Thank you. 5 spotlight commitments from our 2017 vision. And let me say at this point, it is not that everything else contained in the 2017 vision is being jettisoned. For example, I hope and pray that people will go on investing in our engagement with baptism families. But I hope that that will be seen as part of our connecting with more people, part of nurturing everyday disciples, part of encouraging new and courageous ways of worshipping. That commitment to approaching the use, upkeep and future of our church buildings in bold and creative ways has not gone away. I don't need to remind you of that. But I hope it connects with being advocates for flourishing as we look at our buildings and engage with the wider community. I hope our buildings are about enabling people to discover new depths to prayer and spiritual growth, about encouraging new and courageous ways of worshipping, etc., etc. We are looking for more weaving and integration as we grow in living our life together. And if you're feeling really perturbed that as you look at these spotlight areas, you're worried that we're no longer placing schools at the heart of our mission, fear not. Rather, there's a strong recognition that having schools as a standalone commitment is not reflecting that commitment for our schools to be part of every aspect of our life together. The living of life together is about people of every age, every background. For example, being advocates for flourishing. What does that mean for toddler groups? What does that mean for ministry in care homes? What does this mean for racial justice? And of course, it's not just about people. It's about the whole of creation. And indeed, our engagement with the brokenness and injustices of our whole world. And let's not forget our international partnerships. So it's time to hear a few stories as we stand in the present, looking back to what has been and looking at how these spotlight areas are emerging and being woven together. I have to say that this has been an ever-changing programme, as people could be here and couldn't be here. So you are going to meet a number of people who are going to be speaking on behalf of a number of other people who can't be here. But I'm first going to invite out Susan Cook to come out here. I mentioned earlier that no one was meant to be focused on everything, but rather there's been an endeavour to provide input and training for where people were being called to focus. And I know that in the benefice where Susan and Sue are, that they have participated in a learning community called Flourish, and that has woven together for them a number of these themes.
So the Greenway benefice consists of Holy Trinity, Badgeworth, St Paul's, Sherdington and St Mary's, Wickham with Bentham. And I'm Susan, the vicar, and speaking with me is Sue, who is a church warden and a key member of the ministry team. And we would have had with us 8-year-old George, who goes to the school, but he's playing in a football tournament. And it was a hard decision for him, but he decided he couldn't let his team down. I promise you, if I hadn't mentioned him, I would hear about it for another few weeks. So he's very sorry he can't be with us. For the past 2 years, Greenway Benefice has been on a journey as part of the Flourish learning community. And that's a learning community that's being piloted by the diocese with LICC, London Institute of Contemporary Christianity, and CPAS. And if you want to know a little bit more about it, you could talk to Pauline. I've lost track. Oh, Pauline's there. Pauline will wave at you. And this has also overlapped with the necessitated changes and development in online worship due to the pandemic. So in some ways that has made some of our changes a little easier. We started with a strong local ministry team in the benefice, the majority of whom became members of the Flourish core team. And our focus has been on encouraging everyday disciples, including sharing our faith stories and stories of our day-to-day ordinary lives. This is in worship. And alongside that, we've continued to nurture and develop the ministries of a range of people who are not ordained. On the ground, this means more lay-led worship, including online worship during the pandemic. And it means even closer working with Sherdington School, including our 5th Sunday benefice worship, which we hold in the school. We've enabled people to carry out their particular ministries through things like setting up 4 new small groups, house groups, alongside our existing Bible study group. The small groups are led by a range of people, one by me and our curate Rebecca, but others led by Sue, our reader Rob, and our administrator Chris. And group members are growing in confidence, and we're looking forward to rearranging them so that some of the members can start new groups. The groups are focusing on fellowship and prayer, particularly for each other, studying the Bible and applying it in their everyday lives. And they did begin as online meetings, and many have now progressed to in-person meetings. As a result of our Flourish learning, and in conjunction with the needs thrown up by the pandemic, we've been brave enough to start Greenway Gifts, a non-referral food bank, now open every Monday morning, and with treat bags for young and old at Easter and Christmas. We worked with the school initially to assess need and identify possible clients. They were anonymous to us at church, but known to the senior leadership team at school. And some clients still receive their groceries direct from the school, as they have a stock of bags. And some receive through the village cafe, who also have a stock of bags. So we'll be building stronger links with the needy in our parishes through this initiative, which wouldn't have started without the confidence we gained from Flourish.
As COVID restrictions have varied, our present pattern of worship has evolved and includes a benefice communion service every 4th Sunday and more lay-led services, freeing up Susan to be able to lead with others and also to have time to meet people over coffee following services instead of rushing on to the next venue. You might have heard of the Frontline Sundays initiative promoted by LICC. We ran the Frontline Sundays series for 5 weeks last year online, and it was a breath of fresh air to do something different online and it did start a change in our culture. We're working hard now at sending out confident disciples into their everyday lives, and we have used the "this time tomorrow" idea often, interviewing and then praying for individuals as they face the normal stuff of life. And this happens during an online service or during a gathered service. And we've interviewed a range of people, including John Millen, our head teacher, and George, of whom you've heard, a pupil at the school, and himself a regular leader during lockdown of online worship on Fridays with his mum, who is an ordinand. Having interviewed people, we pray for the specific challenges that they name, and we use our frontline prayer regularly to remind us that whoever we are, wherever we are, and whatever we are doing, God is interested and present, and that our daily stuff matters. Starting to use "this time tomorrow" online was particularly fortuitous, as the services there were for the benefice, and people seemed to have more confidence to speak on Zoom than if hauled up in the front of a gathered congregation in church. School is an integral part of all that we do as a worshipping community in the benefice. We work hand in hand to encourage worship in different places and in different ways. And we collaborate on things like our annual Benefice Eco Week. The school is our fourth worshipping community, along with the three churches, with monthly school prayers open to everyone and a community carol service in the school hall, to name just two of the things. We all know change is difficult. The things we've mentioned and are encouraged by LICC as a way forward, they call 1-degree shifts. Each small change has a significant impact on our aim to nurture everyday disciples, people who are getting braver about talking about their faith and really trying to live it out. So what have we seen as a result of Flourish? A more confident and enabled team of lay and ordained disciples, even stronger links with the school, more people taking an interest in living out their faith from Monday to Saturday. We think we are beginning to flourish.
Brilliant, thank you. Many of you will hopefully know that Sportily has emerged from our life vision. I'm going to say it only once. It was once called One Life. Never again. Sportily has emerged. There was a commitment in 2017 to use sport, music and art to build relationships and share the Christian faith. There was also a commitment to invest in people and programmes which excite young people to explore and grow in faith. In 2017, none of us predicted that the vision and reality of Sportily would be part of what would emerge. And I'm going to invite Jackie Hyde to now come out and share just a taster of what life has begun to look like in Innsworth.
So there's a map of the area that we're talking about. It's north of Gloucester, just outside the ring road. And there are some letters on the map. T is for Twigworth, I is for Innsworth, L is for Longford. And they're in 3 different benefices, and we also work in very close partnership with 2 local Methodist congregations. So there's quite a lot of different congregations who are involved, and one of the great joys for me is that sense of wider connection has been really enriching for all of us. We have fun together. You are allowed to do Christian good work and have a really good laugh. And that's great. And it's been a real source of encouragement and fellowship and prayer for me in the rest of my ministry. I've got some photos of the local housing to give you a flavour of the mixture. So just to give you a little bit of a flavour of what we're talking about, there's some existing older housing from the 1950s onwards in Innsworth. And then there's a variety of housing in Longford that was built about 6 years ago. There are 2 schools that are already open in this area, 2 single form, one's growing actually, one's nearly a double form entry primary school and one single form primary school. And more housing is being built as we speak. There are plans for another 2 new schools, green areas, play parks, green spaces. And the final total in the area we're talking about will probably be about 8,500 people, which is quite a lot of people, isn't it? And there isn't a church building within 1.5 miles of even the outer edges of that area. And so in 2017, so quite near the beginning of living out the life vision, Nathan Yalton began working alongside some existing work in Innsworth, just for a few hours a week, really. And the focus has been on investing in people and programs which excite young people to explore and grow in faith. And you can see there's some photos from school clubs and holiday clubs. That's Nathan with the sun visor. And there have been some times of sharing food together as well. That's been an important time of actually talking to each other and growing in fellowship. Every activity is very clear that it's being run by Christians and open to everyone. We're very explicit about that church and Christian connection. And every activity always includes some form of prayer and is always rooted in Christian values. And the conversations include an openness about the life stories of the leaders and volunteers. And I think that's really important. There is absolutely zero sense of competition with the local congregations. I don't have any real traction in that part of my community. This is doing something else. There are people from Innsworth who come to St John's, but they are not also people who come to these activities. And almost all of these children have had no exposure to church life. Very few of them know very much at all about Christianity. And a few of them now, a few years in, a very small group of them are now going to a local Methodist youth group regularly. And that's a real source of encouragement. And that youth group is about 3 miles from where they live. So if they're prepared to travel that far, what might happen if we can do more locally? So we've got another slide. So the next step is just beginning to take shape. Nathan has been appointed to be based in this area full-time from January, with an even stronger commitment than there already was to a focus on encouraging new and courageous ways of worshipping in different places which connect with more people. So far the emphasis has been on making that initial connection, and this is a really big and strong and brave, very brave step in a strong, committed direction of beginning to build towards new worshipping communities. We have roughly no idea what that will look like. I can tell you quite a lot about what it won't look like. I don't think it's going to involve any pews, and probably not any hymn books, maybe not even a guitar, who knew? These are just some random pictures of what it could look like, maybe. It might become a worshipping community around some of the outreach football work that Nathan's already doing, or around the holiday clubs might grow into a worshipping community. There's a picture of some people exercising under a tree, and Nathan's talking about some adult sports activities as well as child-based ones, and one of those might become a worshipping community, or a running club, might be something in a local park. There is not very much in the way of community space with a roof on it at the moment, so it might well be outdoors, and it might well include food as part of it. We all know that can be a really important part of drawing people closer together. So it might look something like one of those, but God will probably have something. So far, the whole story of this has been we've had some ideas, and God has done something really quite completely different. I'm not sporty. How on earth does God think this is a good idea? But there we are. So my final slide is just a road into one of the building sites. There's actually a few houses there now. Into a very unknown, uncharted future. From the beginning of all of this, nobody's been able to show us what the next step might look like. It's very new and very different. But I can tell you that none of this would have happened if the local churches had had to resource it ourselves. We simply can't. So without the engagement from Psalms and the diocese and the life planning groups and the Methodist circuit, this is a completely ecumenical exercise, and some of their plans across the whole of Gloucestershire are being shaped around this project. And without that, it wouldn't have been possible at all. And it has not been a smooth and easy ride, because life's not like that. We've tried some things that have been a complete disaster. We've set up really exciting things that nobody has come to. We've done all those things. And COVID has obviously been a massive challenge. And many of the things that were just beginning to be most interesting simply had to stop. But actually that time has been very helpful to us in shaping the next stage. 2 local parishes are in vacancy at the moment, which is why I'm standing here all on my own, Jackie no maids. And the Methodist Circuit is reshaping itself, as I said, partly around this project. So this is a major time of change. But every time something has changed or gone wrong so far, we've learned some really important things and built stronger relationships with each other and with the local communities through the really tough stuff. And our next steps have always been more positive because we've listened to God and to each other and to the community and said, well, we got that wrong. What are we doing next? And stepped out again. We get knocked down and we get back up again. We're confident that God has a plan. We need to be willing to try things and to take risks and to be open and vulnerable at times when God is asking us to do things that sound quite crazy. And then we need to work out how to join in with what God is planning for the people and places of this particular part of Gloucestershire. Please hold us in your prayers.
Thank you, Jackie. Really good to hear that sense of where you've come from, where you are, and who knows what might emerge. I think it's a really good place, as we talk about Sportily, to say this is not about parishes being pushed to the margins. It was great that we had Jackie as a parish priest sharing that. This is not about pushing parishes to the margins and now focusing on lots of shiny, innovative things. This is about both and. It's about that church landscape of varied configuration, or what the National Church calls mixed ecology. As we live life together, there is an utter commitment to healthy parish ministry and of clergy and lay leaders being clear in their identity and their different callings. Undoubtedly, there does need to be some reshaping, some reconfiguration across our parishes, but it's not all about numbers and finance. Even if we had no financial issues anywhere in the diocese, we would still be doing deanery strategic planning. It's about that vision I painted at the beginning. How are we shaping ourselves? Just look at all that new housing that's going up. How are we shaping ourselves so that we as the body of Christ in different local contexts are living to God's glory and ensuring that every person has the opportunity to encounter Jesus Christ and become part of a worshipping community which may or may not look like anything we recognise at the moment. If you've ever joined in with any of the Sportily teams doing worship, you may have been throwing balls to one another or doing very uncomfortable exercises as you pray for the pain of the world. There are different ways of worshipping. It might not look like anything we've seen before. Some of our new worshipping communities will bubble up through those parish churches. For example, messy church, muddy church, those may become worshipping communities in their own right. Then other new worshipping communities will emerge through different initiatives such as Sportily or Church Army Centres for Mission. It's great to have Andy Wilson here as part of this synod. New worshipping communities may bubble up through things we haven't even yet imagined. And partnership with parish worshipping communities is going to be crucial in all of this. And had Nathan been here, I know he would have reflected on that key relationship that he has working for Sportily and working with the local parish worshipping communities around. Tim Hasty-Smith is here. Tim, give me a wave. Tim, many of you will know. Tim, give us a twirl. Tim, as well as being a parish priest, a vicar of Bybury with Winston and Barnsley, Tim has also taken on the role of Diocesan Missioner for new worshipping communities, and many of you will have met Tim. I hope over lunch you'll speak to him. Tim is full of energy, enthusiasm and wisdom. I've seen Luke. Luke, where are you? Luke, come out here. Luke, you have just, I think, become part of the Sportily team. And when we had the official launch of Sportily last Sunday, may I say, up at Viney Hill in the forest, it was raining. Well, it just stopped raining. It was freezing. I can just about feel my toes now. We gathered up there on the sports field around a fire which we lit. Luke gave us the most amazing rap. And Luke, it seems to me that reflects a number of the things that we're talking about on our 5 commitments. And thank you for being willing to come and give say, there's a microphone there. Put it on, come stand here and rap away. Go on.
Matthew 28:19. A vision seen of disciples making disciples. Not growth just for the sake of it, but growth so we are spiritually fit to pass on the holy truth, to lift the lid and raise the roof of knowledge. Not satisfied with catchy sound bites, but personally sharing spiritual insights. Praying, taking someone under our wing, opening up our life for them, becoming more than a Facebook friend, authentic, more than just a spiritual waiter, looking for tips and then see you later, genuine. Sharing over a coffee or three, the clarity of our theology, the flames of spirituality, the heart behind morality, the grace that makes the blind to see. It's time to rise above the old constraints, to realize we're all the saints, giants of faith without restraint, disciples, students of the way of Christ, full of worth and highly prized. It's time we fully realize what it means to be fully sized and grown, maturing in faith and truth and deeds, scattering a million seeds, loving the one or two or three he brings into our path to feed, growing personally, rooting our faith in scriptures, modeling ourselves on holier pictures than Instagram and social media, growing others. Now is not the time to shrink. Someone needs me not to blink, but open my eyes and begin to think beyond me, the generation still to come. What if I discipled one? A year, the vision would surely be realized. A healthy church full of life. Check your pulse and check your vitals. Disciples making disciples.
As they say, try following that. If in that amazing rap you cannot recognise all those 5 spotlight areas, then we're failing to communicate. But how exciting, and that sense that we will connect with people we are not currently connecting with, as Luke just said in his rap, in many different ways. Who you are, Luke, and a lot of what Sportily is doing segues perfectly into inviting Vicky to come out now and say something to us. Vicky, come stand next to me. Vicky, you are embodying something which has emerged called Youth Connectors. As people have come together over these past few years around that commitment to invest in people and programmes which excite young people to explore and grow in faith, there's been a recognition of needing to connect a lot of what is already happening in different places, to connect those already involved in youth ministry across the diocese who are feeling a bit disconnected. And then to connect young people who are already Christians, desiring to live out their faith in their everyday lives in their schools. How might they be better connected together for support and encouragement and nurture? So rather than putting resources into one youth advisor, as many dioceses do, the aim is to have a number of part-time youth connectors across the diocese. A number of you will have met Barry Voice, who, yes, I'm going to say again, is unable to be here today, who works part-time with the Door in Stroud. And Barry is now working as part-time as our senior youth connector. And Vicky has very recently, been appointed as a youth connector based in Worcester. And Vicky, come and talk to us. And again, if you're good at sort of playing that game of bingo, then look at these 5 spotlight areas as you hear people speaking and just see how they're being woven together. Vicky, over to you.
Thank you, Bishop Rachel. Got an act to follow with Luke. But as Bishop Rachel mentioned, my name is Vicky Falvey, and I am indeed the Youth Connector for Gloucester City Deanery. And Youth Connect was born out of the Life Vision and embodies the growing faith values of connected communities, spiritual encounters, and imaginative practices. Now, I'm sure all of us in this room are all too aware that that 11 to 18 age group is seen as part of that missing generation in church. But, and there is a but, we believe this doesn't have to be the end of the story. So we at Youth Connect are a resource to inspire, equip and empower young people, those working with young people, and organisations across the diocese to be a catalyst of change. And we, in every part of our beings, believe that young people don't have to remain that missing generation. So we are here to support youth ministers in their context, to draw people together through youth work meetings. Now that's both volunteers and paid, through deanery and diocesan youth events, and with wider organisations working with young people, such as Sportily, The Rock and The Door, and those are just a few. Now, one common question that Barry Boyce and myself have been having a lot is something along the lines of, so how do I grow my youth group? Now, there's certainly no one answer to this, but what we do know is our young people have a voice, and it's often about starting with them, meeting the young people where they are at, and from there, the opportunity to grow spiritually and deepen discipleship will grow. Now, maybe you can think of a young person you engage with in your church or context. And I wonder, next time you see them, why don't you ask them, what do you need to help your faith go deeper? Now, the Life Together commitments identify young people as a priority. And today may be the launch of these commitments. But we are also building on the amazing work that has and is already being done around children and young people, especially in schools. And there are already wonderful things going on across our diocese, reaching young people where they are at. And I'm just going to share a couple of these with what's going on. And again, there'll be many more examples across this room. Trinity Cheltenham, as part of its role as being a resource church in the diocese, have created several missional communities which are specifically designed for 11 to 18-year-olds. These communities are wide and varied, from a youth netball group to Eat and Do, to small groups on a Sunday, all with an overarching mission of reaching young people and creating active disciples. Another young person in our diocese, in a diocese church, is sharing their faith story through a blog, being proactive and stepping out. An example again of how a young person is committed to living out their faith every day. And finally, some of you may have heard recently young people talking about climate change on Radio Gloucester. Many of these young people come from local churches across our diocese. Our young people are willing to stand up and be a voice for what they believe, to living out their faith every day in their generation. Young people may be seen or often quoting as being part of that missing generation, but the story doesn't have to stop there. Let's continue to commit to our young people, starting with them, and let's ask God to open our eyes to what could be and respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Really great. I think again you can say these are all grown up. There's 2017 commitments, and now where is the spotlight shining? Just one more story. Again, I hope you'll be able to see in this story how those commitments are being woven together. This final story is from St Catherine's in Gloucester, and I'm looking for Joe. Come out here, Joe.
Hello, so I'm Joe Pestle, I'm the vicar at St Catherine's, and you can imagine Claire stood with me, and Angus, who's a young man of 13, and they should be presenting, because what I'm about to talk about has been a totally lay-led initiative, And when I've got involved, it's mainly been helping people park in the car park. So I've been very pleased about that. When the pandemic started, a member of our local community, not a member of the church, came to me, gave me a cheque for £1,000 and said the church will know how to help people in need. I, much to my distress, realised that I didn't immediately know how to use that money. And we've been on quite an interesting journey as a church as a result. What I did was give that money to the school, and the school, as we had gone into the pandemic, was feeding families in need who were falling through the gap between families that were able to access food support, but there were quite a number of families who were in desperate need and who weren't able to access that support. As we continued to work with the school and move towards the summer holidays, we decided as a church that we would build on something that we'd done the previous summer, which was to provide hot meals once a week for families like that in our community. And we began to take over the distribution of food packages, and that's really grown. We've supported quite a number of families, probably on average 25 a week over the last 16 months or so, and over the summer holidays, we were also able to give recipe bags and activity packs and different things like that for those families. And gradually, over the course of time, we've built on those relationships. It was very moving to me in July of 2020 when we began that, and it was also the first week we were back in the church building, to be standing there breaking bread for the first time in 4 months or so, but to see beyond me the piles of food that had been given and that we were breaking open for our communities. And there was just a wonderful sense of God's presence in both of those things. We've journeyed with many families over these 16 months. We've seen the church becoming a safe place for them, for tackling exclusion and isolation within the community. For those families struggling with mental health, we've been able to take food to them. We've expanded on the food provision by listening, by offering prayer and support. We've offered prayer spaces to help people on the journey of tackling some of the mental health issues that have arisen during the pandemic. We've been able to support local charities working with people coming out of prison or rehabilitation, also providing food and recipe bags. We were able to work with the council to advocate for a different way of food provision to happen in this summer 2021 that enabled a lot more families to access support and activities. We've tried to be authentic. We've tried to be ourselves, sharing our joys and sorrows in this time as well. And relationships have grown. We feel like our church family has really expanded. We were able to run things like garden church and a recent light party, and many of these families have become engaged with these worship activities, and it's been wonderful to share the joy of them exploring a journey with God. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a taste of some of those things. But I would just say, pray, ask God to lead and guide you. We would never have worked out how to do this, but we're trying to stay alert to what God's doing in our midst.
Thank you, Joe. I'm sure that as you've listened to that, there are so many stories that you could share, and I'm going to encourage you to do that over lunch in a moment. Those 5 spotlight areas. There's being advocates for flourishing, encouraging new and courageous ways of worshipping, nurturing everyday disciples, investing in people and programmes which excite young people to explore and then grow in faith, and developing diverse lay and ordained leaders. I hope that those 5 commitments, as we move into however many years this will be for, we haven't put a 5-year time limit on this. We've learnt a lot, haven't we? None of us knew a pandemic was coming. Let's start here, which is towards that vision, that picture that I've tried to paint as we've collected those stories together. And let's see where God leads us. And next week, this information will be going out to you, to those with whom you serve. There'll be some tailored materials going out to schools. If you think there are particular materials that are needed to reach particular people in particular places, do speak with Lucy. Lucy, thank you for all the communication work you've done to brand this. I hope that those of you who've lived with the last 5 years will recognise the similarity in branding, but also recognise the difference, to say this is life together. Got time for a few questions in a moment, but before that I want to state one thing, which is that I hope that you can recognise that this resonates with the Church of England vision for the 21st century. A commitment to a church which is younger and more diverse, a church where mixed ecology is the norm, and a church of missionary disciples, that nurturing everyday faith. If those things that have been named by the national church, within that national church vision, are not mirrored in all that you've heard today, then again, I have failed in my communication. But that is there at the end of that letter leaflet. And I hope that we'll be weaving all of that together as we move forward. Gracious God, as we gather together here, as we gather from all the different contexts where we spend our lives, Sunday through to Saturday, we thank you for all that we have shared over this past 5 years. As we stand in the present looking to the future, we ask that you would lead us on. You would lead us on in our leadership. By your Holy Spirit, give us more imagination. May we grow in faith as we seek to share that faith with the people and places of our lives. And may we learn more of what it is to be engaged with the people and the places around us, those places of joy, those places of brokenness, with all of creation. So we offer you ourselves, and we pray now for your blessing. So the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be upon you, be upon your communities, this day and always. Amen. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
In the name of Christ.